from north to south and west to east to actually the closing of this UCAN ULLL Open Fora Week on higher education work-based learning in the changing world. Well, I may say we had really interesting discussions, at least from my side this week, starting with the masterclass of Carol Costley at the beginning of the week. Of course, I think this masterclass also set the tone for the week. And thank you, Carol, for that. And thank you for being here today. We had some international contributions, case studies from Abena and Anita on Tuesday. And we had from Eva Sedakeni get into the groove, the issue also of digital workplace learning in this sense. We had the introduction of Unilab, a new project of UCAN based on that takes in its center work-based learning. And we had yesterday Lucilia Santos with industry university partnerships and the case of the University of Aveiro. So I think this was the round, or I would say the flowers of this week. And today I'm on the one hand very glad that most of the speakers made it for being with us for a panel discussion, which I at this point would like to open up to the audience, of course. For the one hand, through questions through the chat, but also, of course, statements maybe to the questions of your experiences that you bring with you. You are listening closely, and I think that some of you are also experts in this field or would like maybe to share experience on your developments. And I see colleagues from, well, Florida, Florida, Estonia. So hello, Susan. And I may just shortly, maybe you could show us just shortly the slide for today's panel. The topic is the future visions of work-based learning in a changing world. And we had 5 panelists: Carol Costley, Anita Mert, Eva Sedat-Kenny, Valentina Kononova, and Lucilia Santos. Unfortunately, Lucilia, for personal reasons, can't be with us today. So, but I hope at least that also Eva will be here, but we will see. But this will be so the panel group of also from the presentations we had this week. And as I would say, I would then also open the discussion to all. So, well, maybe taking stock of what we heard this week and then also looking at the future, because, well, it's quite dynamic at the moment, and let's see where we go with work-based learning. I think this is something where we need to be on the forefront in developing. So thank you for that. And I may now ask to have Olas back, and I may ask to make visible one after the other. Carol Costley, where is she? Yes, thank you, Carol. So Carol, and I just shortly introduce again, though I think that most of the people were joining on Monday, but just in short. So Carol Costley is Professor of Work and Learning at Middlesex University in London, UK. And she's also the director of the Penn University Work and Learning Research Center in the Department of Education. The special interest of Carol's research is in professional doctorates and in work-based learning. And there, especially the methodologies and epistemologies in work-based learning and how they additionally add and support to subject-based approaches to knowledge. So very welcome again, Carol. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Then I may introduce again Anita Mert, from actually my own chair. Anita Mert is an educational scientist working in the Institute of Educational Science and Media Research with the chair University Continuing Education and Teaching and Learning at the Fernuniversität in Hagen. Her main research interests focus on identifying key concepts of current and future formations of continuing higher education, as well as conceptions of learning gender and diversity. Welcome, Anita.
Thank you. Hi.
Well, then I would go on with Valentina KONONOVA. She was there the whole week, but she did not speak until now, so the best comes at the end. Valentina KONONOVA currently works at the Department of Economics and Management at the Siberian Federal University in Russia. And Valentina does research in comparative education, language education, and adult education. And why Valentina is especially here today, she is involved in the project UNILAB, a project that was presented the day before yesterday by Francesca Uras on work-based learning, outreach of work-based learning in Russia, Azerbaijan, and
Belarus.
Belarus. Thank you, Valentina. So you will, it's at the first part of the project, but we will be very interesting also in your experiences and also your contribution to this topic. So then I see at the moment I don't see Eva actually. Is there Eva? She's not here. So it's the three of us then, the four of us with me. So I see, well, then let's do it in the smaller round. And I would then also, I mean, I may ask who would like to put on the camera now is of course welcome. I may ask you if you have questions, please put them in the chat first. And then we see how we can include them. And of course, if you have to say something of the questions that I will pose to our panel, you are, you're welcome. Please give me just a sign per hand like this, so I can see best. I have you all on my big screen now. Okay, so well, looking back at this, I think quite full week we had on work-based learning in higher education and the changes going on. I would come back to our panelists with the first question that is maybe also coming back to what you presented and talked about. What is from your point of view, from your research or your practice view, the main message that you want to share with those people who want to engage more deeply in work-based learning in higher education? And at that point, I may start with Carol and ask you for your, well, for sharing with us from your big pool of experience, what you would like to share. Please, Carol.
Well, oh dear, I'm so sorry.
No worries. We know
so
this
loud
sound.
as well. What timing was that? Okay. Yes. What do I want to? Well, I think we need to think differently. Is what we need to share about high-level knowledge. I think one of the problems, I mentioned this before, with work-based learning is the word work. I don't know how that translates in other languages, but it seems to be a big frightener for people. As it means vocational and therefore not higher level learning. So I think it's very important to say that when we're looking at the world of work, which is not just paid work, it's all high level endeavor that people undertake, in my view. So when we look at that, what is the high level learning, the high level knowledge that is needed to undertake that in the best possible way? So I think that kind of thinking, get out of the old thinking, of academic, technical and vocational, because we need technicians, we need people doing all kinds of different jobs, yes we do, but we need to sort of think more laterally. So things like reflexivity, go back to some of the ancients and what they said about phronesis, go back to the critical sociologists that talked about praxis, go back to, or our current practice theorists. There are many in Italy, for example, but are we connecting with their work on sensibility, on emotional intelligence, you know, about how human beings react with each other? It's not just about, you know, what's intelligence, it's about how we bring that intelligence forward. Anyway, I could go on, but I think that gives the flavor of what I think is important.
Thank you very much, Carol. I think this is this change of perspective and what does high-level learning mean? What I actually, well, in German we mostly speak about competences, and I had the discussion with John Talbot on that. But I think it's really also an attitude about how you address things when you talk about reflexivity, critical thinking, these important terms, as I understand. So thank you for that, and thank you for your message on that. And I would now maybe go on and look at Anita in the next step and say, Anita, from the research you've done, and I see also Bena is here, so maybe she also wants to say something on that. What would be also your message from the research you have done? And Anita, I know you did research both in Germany and internationally, so maybe you want to share of both sides to the audience on work-based learning.
Yeah, thank you. What I'd like to say is that if you want to do work-based learning, you shouldn't let yourself get disencouraged from the many obstacles that might appear, because what I've seen from the research internationally and nationally is that it works, and it's a very important endeavor. And joining up with those that are sharing this idea within their own university or institution, and with those from outside the university. So yeah, keeping the things going. If you keep and stick to those who are engaged in doing this, this can be very helpful, and together, and bringing out all the important successful things, and this will really help to bring this forward. So this is the thing I'd like to share, not get disencouraged, but keep it up. Yeah.
Thank you, Anita. I think there was also a bit this networking and this idea. Yeah, I have my micro on. So thank you. And I would ask now Valentina, I mean, not knowing how far you are in the Federal Siberian University, but maybe you can share something from your experience you have, maybe via Unilab, but maybe also about what you experience at your university and what message you can take from there. Please, Valentina.
Thank you. Thank you. We started our project Unilab not long ago. We are just away in the middle of our first year. But you know, until it started, the project started, actually many issues were hidden somewhere inside and were not discussed, I would say. They were discussed privately, and I remember one talk with one student who said that practical placement of work-based learning was nothing to him and gave nothing to him. And I know the student, I know that he was an excellent student. I was surprised. I asked him why, and he said, we were not, they didn't need us. They didn't need us at all. And we started discussing just within our project, and many issues are being discussed actually, including that work-based learning, we consider it as an excellent way to develop not only, I would say, professional competencies or technical skills, as you said, as you, Carol, said, but also, you know, an opportunity, an excellent opportunity to you know, to taste this real requirements or real responsibility, just which is impossible outside the real workplace. For example, attitudes towards work, or just how to meet deadlines at just in real situations, how to take responsibility, etc. And and we see that communication is a key to success here, just a key factor for being just a responsible employee. And we see one challenge, by the way, just talking about challenges, we see one challenge here that you do that, but I personally, I did not notice that we somehow consciously regarded quality just from different parts, quality. And we think that to ensure quality is important, and just to use tools for assessment, and because quality leads or may lead to benefits for all the parties, for employers, for universities, and mainly just for the students and politicians as well, and the parents as well. Many actors are involved, but just quality also. And another probably issue, or another skill, or what skill they acquire through real work-based learning is socializing, just because socializing with people of different generations, just people of different status, just something, just that is important. That is the things we are discussing within the project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I see Carol and then Abena. Please, Carol.
I just want to pick up on what you said, Valentina, about quality. We had a conference once many years ago in the women's group called Quality Equals Equality. And that's really stuck with me, that we're seeing nowadays, some of us older people, I'm sure all people can remember when there were specific groups in society that got excluded from, I don't know, climbing up the ladder and all the rest of it. But now we're much more aware of that. And what you notice, in spite of all, some of the not very nice things that are still happening, is that when you have people from diverse backgrounds, equal amounts of women and all the rest of it, you get a much more equal, diversified, better thought through set of circumstances. One example I like to give was in those days of struggle in the 1970s with gender equality, for example, I was in education, and there was this statistics that in primary schools, 95% of the teachers were women and 95% of the head teachers were men. But then when it was discovered that, with equality, you get better outcomes, our local supermarket started having a female manager. So it was actually the business community who have, got more business acumen probably, who realized this first, that to get the best out, and that is such a good way of putting it to the business community. They don't need to now, they know it, for diverse communities.
They probably also just understood that they had some tacit skills, tacit knowledge, and they could just apply this tacit knowledge to just for their future career opportunities, or just for life.
Yeah. So thank you for that. And I would like to go on with that to Abena, because I think, Abena, you were already nodding. Maybe you could go on that, please, Abena.
Yes, absolutely, because I actually couldn't have wished for a better intro for the point I wanted to just add or complement to what has been said so far, and that's very much about culture. So it tags on nicely onto that quality point. And when I say culture, I don't just mean the various national cultures. I mean, the different cultures of work, of employers, the different cultures of academics, and also because we don't just have academic learning and experiential learning, but we also have peer learning, which is an equally important learning, especially in work integrating or work-based learning context that perhaps quickly or easily get sidelined. But the idea of learning from the other professionals who are attending a work-based learning course is equally as important as learning from the work site or learning from the academic components of a course. And what we have with that in nowadays world, we often have an epistemic exclusion. We are not inclusive because particular types of knowledge, like for example, academic knowledge or ways of acquiring knowledge. So the academic way of acquiring knowledge is within the context of an academic course always seen as superior. So we are still, and what that does, it excludes ways of knowing that come through a work context or through a practically applied context, or to that peer learning, you know, that ways of knowing through the exchange with other professionals, through the debates and discussions, or even just watching how they perhaps complete a work-based learning task within their context. Yeah, so what we do is this incredibly exclusive. So we're excluding these other ways of knowing, and if we don't exclude them, then we look down on them and we don't consider them as equally worthy. So, and that kind of fitted wonderfully in what Carol and Valentina, and of course also Susan and Anita had said earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Abena.
Thank you, Abena. And I see already Anita with the equality. There comes Anita in, please.
No, I just wanted to expand it to another level, even because we have this within the universities and between universities and companies. And what I wanted to point out, and I especially was able to see this in the German context, is there is also this political level where we have framework conditions and we have the different sectors of education that are, at least in Germany, very strictly separated from each other. And I think there is also a need for a culture change on this level, on this political level, to somehow put down the barriers between these areas, or engage a new view on the different types of learning and knowledge and who can add to which aim the best. And yeah, I just wanted to add there.
Thank you very much, Anita. And I'm just looking at the round. Is there anybody who wants to say something on that issue? Then now is the time to give me a short sign on this. Or make yourself visible before you give me a sign, if you like. If I don't see that at the moment, there's just one issue that I think, and I think, Carol, I tipped on that, so I'm not talking about the questions I have, because that's something that I'm interested now from when we started now. The discussion is, I mean, Carol, you also did, I mean, when we, also looking at Germany, but also from what we heard in this week, was very much, and also implicit here at the first statements, that when we talk about work-based learning, we also talk certainly about certain disciplines that are closer maybe to this practice, or that are more, closer to practice, and who would more think about connections and not thinking the hierarchy, but more the complementary pathways we have. So I was wondering, are there good and bad disciplines at our universities? And where? So, no, I mean, this is now a very provocative question, but maybe you could elaborate a bit on that. I would like to hear that from the panel a bit. Carol, you laughed. You need to start now.
Yeah, I wouldn't say good and bad, but I mean, clearly, in my university, for example, we have got a big a teaching hospital. So in order to get a bachelor's degree in nursing, you have to, you know, be observed in a hospital doing some nursing, you know. So without doubt, you know, people in the health sector, because it's so important that they can actually do the job, they do tend to write more about work-based learning, and they do seem to be a discipline that's ahead of the field. And it's for that very good practical reasons. And then also education, teacher trainers are observed. And the arts, people in arts, slightly different take, but again, we can learn so much. I've learned so much about people, about how they assess pieces of art, for example, because it's very different if you're not assessed through the written word, you know. So they have so much expertise in the arts about, you know, how to assess something, which you might think is more a matter of individual judgment. Perhaps you might think that. I come from a performing arts background myself, actually. You know, it's I worked in a secondary school once, and people say, how do you assess work-based learning? Well, it's nothing comparing assessing 7 children in a band all playing different instruments all at different levels. You know, things are not impossible, and we can learn from each other's as far as disciplines are concerned. Learn from other disciplines, because I have a pan-university status in my university. People from across the disciplines come, and they really enjoy listening to each other's best practice. And it might not be exactly transferable onto theirs, but you know, it gives them hooks and ideas. So I think the disciplines are monoliths in universities, and so they should be. They're important, but you know, this sharing and the interdisciplinary things, I mean, most research councils have agreed that, well, I think they all have, that the highest level of research comes in the margins of the disciplines, the new thinking.
Thank you very much. And I lost, of course, you already have this PAN status within your university. I think it is also an important, or how would you say, an interesting way of where you put actually work-based learning at your university, because you could have it also in the disciplines, if you like. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So any other issues? Abena, what says international research from your what are the actually the disciplines? Are there good and bad disciplines from your point of view?
Well, yeah, very much as Carol hinted at already. There are, of course, some disciplines that are by default practically applied. So they've had an entirely different relationship with acquiring knowledge through work sites, such as the medical profession, such as engineering, anything that's hands-on in that context. There is potentially much to learn from that, because even though they may not have labeled it work integrated learning or work-based learning, but essentially that's what they've been doing back in the beginning of the 20th century already. If we think about cooperative education in the United States, which started 1919 or 1910 with engineering. Because that was just one discipline where it wasn't even up to discussion if they wanted to become engineers without killing people. They just had to combine worksite learning with academic learning. So surely there is a lot we could learn from these sort of disciplines.
Thank you very much. Anita, a view to Germany and the German, German-based research. So,
yeah, I can also only support the idea from learning from each other, and I was maybe just one small glimpse from a German example. So there was in the engineering part, interestingly, the topic of professional identity is almost never addressed directly. I mean, okay, they have work integrating and stuff like this, but this part of professional identity is, yeah, it's not explicit in there. But when we inquired on this and asked, hey, do you address this issue? Because we know this from other disciplines like social educational sciences. And they said, of course we have this, but the focus is a bit differently shaped, because they were mainly interested in how these students become better aware of that they are now academic persons, you know, because before they were more working, and then they integrated this part of, okay, now I have an academic qualification, and how then to reflect this new knowledge within the context, and how it also changes their own position. So this aspect of reflexivity has been introduced, and that's why I also only can support the idea of sharing the experiences and sharing between the disciplines what is already established in one can really be helpful in the other.
Yeah. Thank you very much on that, Anita. And there was a question from the panel. Susan, I didn't forget your question. This will come later. I have that on my watch. But there was the question about the humanities, actually. And well, humanities could be broad. So even the arts could be the humanities in some, depending where you are. But there was a question also directly on you from Kame. Comment on how to apply work-based learning to humanities. Do you have any examples, ideas, or also, of course, from the others you want to share?
Yeah, well, I think like history and so on. You would undertake a work-based project, I would have thought. So there's plenty of, for example, historical projects which you would undertake, which relate to what people actually do at work. And if you take work in its broadest interpretation, and that's why I feel quite I feel that we have to consider work as all work, again, on grounds of equity. I mean, so many people do unpaid work, and there's community work as well, and it is higher level work. So, for example, I had someone who was working in a developing country and was pulling together various members of the community to put together a particular project, you know. And she was doing a professional doctorate, kind of. So it was work-based. It was based in the work. She wasn't being paid for it, for doing this. She was doing it because she was in a particular place where she could see a need. So, you know, it's sort of work-based learning is getting the best out of what you're trying to do, whatever your endeavor is. And it also has, if you look at it from that perspective, particular ethical issues attached to it, outside of the ethical issues perhaps that universities normally look at when they're someone's undertaking a piece of research or going into the community and doing some investigation where other people are involved. There's a matter of values as well. Is it something which is worthwhile? And that's why I think that work-based learning touches on, doing good things and making a decision about what is important, what can we all share.
Thank you for that. I see Abena, and then I will put myself in the line. Abena, please.
Okay, thank you, Eva. Yeah, I just had a thought, because conceptually that's a very interesting question that Susan posed. And I think conceptually it's always harder for everyone to think about, well, how do some of the subjects in humanities, but also in the social sciences, translate into work-based learning, because we don't have that linear relationship that we maybe have in some other professions. So if you study accountancy, you're going to become most likely because you want to become an accountant. If you study medicine, because you want to become a doctor. So that's quite a linear relationship, and it's relatively easy to see then or to imagine what worksite learning or the work component of the learning would look like. But in the humanities, obviously, study a subject that perhaps doesn't directly or in some sort of linear fashion and automatically into a professional employment sector. But there, I think, and that's also where perhaps some of the cultural or national differences are quite interesting, because studying then about and paid in projects there. But in some other countries, that may, in terms of the employment, the labor market, perhaps lead more towards going into the university sector or the research sector, or you know, doing EU projects or something like that. So I think that there's also something about better understanding labor markets, you know, and here we are mostly academics, so of course we are still all, I guess, biased in some ways, and you know, we're looking for that linear translation. But being more familiar with labor markets, understanding employer needs, national, regional, local employer needs better, we should probably get quite a diverse array of different opportunities for how that translates into different work sites, and how, depending on where the course is delivered or for which sort of a student cohort, what sort of learning opportunities could be built in that enable an experiential learning that is then relevant for the students later on in the employment sector.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I was just, and I think that has a lot to do what Carol, what you also were, I think, doing a lot of research, and I think it was also a topic on Monday, but I think not so strongly, is the question about what this means for research. And also when you do a work-based learning project, I mean, I think the one side is a disciplinary side, is you would learn the methods, the instrument, the methodology of the discipline to do research. And the other thing is when you have a problem at the workplace, is how you would convert that into a research problem and then find the right, I think, Abena, we had that also in our research, and then to find the right methodology to deal with that, which is, in my sense, even more sophisticated than just to learn how to do A, B, C, D, but I think it needs more. So I'm wondering, Carol, when I say that, am I on the right track with that? That it's even more, because the problem is mostly, well, this can't be research. You know, I hear this mostly German voices here, but I think it's even more sophisticated, and it needs even more strength and more capability. Not capability is not the right word in English, but more, well, it's even more research based, and it even needs more sophisticated research, not being least when you're doing research in your own field as practitioners. So maybe, Carol, you could comment on that, because I think this is the crucial point when we talk about research here.
Yes. Well, first of all, in the UK, for example, the word research usually applies only to postgraduate work. So we, in work-based learning, because people who were doing work-based learning programs were sometimes undergraduates, or often undergraduates. So we didn't say it was a research project. We said it was an inquiry project. So we used different words, but to all intents and purposes, what they were doing were using research techniques. So it often is a matter of nomenclature, I feel, you know, what we struggle with here. But to be fair, in order to, at an undergraduate level, to do a piece of inquiry, you really should get the same kind of permissions, because the ethical situation within the university remains the same. And what you brought up was that you're often an insider researcher. So there's the subjectivity, objectivity, which in very traditional quantitative ideas about research, which I thought, you know, had been talked through ad infinitum in the 1970s and 80s about, you know, qualitative and quantitative, and, you know, being different and all the rest of it. I can't even be bothered to go into all of that. That, you know, there are ways of looking at the world other than in this particular very narrow focus. And that doesn't mean a lack of quality, because lots of people internationally have looked into qualitative research. And I'm not saying all work-based research is qualitative either. It could be what they now call mixed methods, I believe. But the important thing about a work-based project for me is that it uses proper research techniques, which are probably ones which are to do with practice. And as I said, there's plenty of practice theorists out there that go right back, and Bourdieu, Derrida, Giddens on sociology side. And now we have practice theorists through the Shatsky's practice turn in social science. You know, it's there. And we had action research came up, didn't it? And people talked about that for a long time. And now there's so many different autoethnography, different very valid and accepted research approaches that you can use, and theorists that you can draw upon. But the thing about the work-based project for me is that within the ethical situation, that you address the values of what you're doing and how valuable it is to practice, because it's work-based learning. It's got to be valuable to our practice, and that it has an outcome, which isn't just a research outcome that, traditionally speaking, I believe we would say, I know I did in my doctorate, and this is the research you need to do following on from this. It should come out with a set of recommendations, which, you know, have been drawn from what you've discovered in that piece of research, or that piece of inquiry. From this piece of inquiry, I now think that this is the case, and it could be problem solving, it could be a creative thing that someone's thought of that's going to be useful in their practice-based situation. And so you should have recommendations which can then be given to those people, or to different sets of people. There's probably lots of different stakeholders in your piece of research. And as I think I mentioned before on Monday, that an executive summary is quite helpful for practice-based situations, whereas you'd have a whole thesis presented to the university if it was a doctorate, or a whole dissertation, or a whole research project, or practice-based project, whatever you're going to call it, presented to the university. So I think work-based projects are slightly, it's the same things are important, but they have a different order of importance, I think, is a way of putting it.
Thank you very much, Carol. Looking at the time and also the questions I wanted to pose and I wanted to bring in, I would like now to switch more to actually what Susan was already posing as question, well, meaning in view also, I maybe put it a bit differently, but the question of Susan was how programs need to adapt due to COVID. We have now the situation that due to the current pandemic and the digitalization that was necessary to do, how did that affect maybe programs, or what are maybe also routes for work-based learning based actually on the pandemic? Because we will not get rid of that, I think, in the next month. I And I know also ULLL is from a university where there is a lot of digitalization. So ULLL, if you want then to come in, maybe with an idea or what you see at your university, you're much welcome. But I would pose the question to my panelists. Where do you see a digitalization path for work-based learning? We had this actually yesterday also in our panel discussion in the afternoon at the European Vet Skills Week. But is there anything you would like to share? Please give me a sign. Oh, there is Jenny. You want to share something?
Hi, thank you. How are you? I've sent you a question because we have activity theory, and they say that activity theory or action theory, depends how people use the term, is a learning theory that applies equally good in universities and work-based learning. Could Carol give us some information and your, ideas about this?
Sorry, Jen, you were in the digitalization pathway already. So
yeah, I know.
You stepped in there. But Carol, is there any short word you want to say on that?
Activity theory.
Yeah.
In particular. Yeah, I think anything like that will lend itself well to a work-based project. Anything that has sort of a practice view. Depends on what you're studying, doesn't it? Take the right research approach. I mean, the same principle applies really, doesn't it? What are you trying to find?
So thank you for that. So the issue on digitalization, I see Anita, please.
Yeah, I don't know where this will be going to go, but I wondered if the increased digitalization from universities, and at least in Germany, there is a lack of it, and there has been a need to do this anyway. So I wondered if this might even be a driver for increasing engagement in work-based learning, because maybe it helps to better interweave the academic learning with the work-based learning if we put some parts of it to this digital space and we use it as an intermediate space for the learning. So this is, I wondered if this could be even a driver for work-based learning, but we'll see. I have no evidence, but we'll be watching how it will be going.
So this will be the next research project then on the digitalization path. Any other ideas to the digitalization? I mean, I have, what I know from different countries or different universities is the virtual laboratories that were already built, and that was, of course, accelerating through the pandemic. But any other ideas you want to share? Abena? Sorry, Valentina and then Abena, please.
Probably just one humble idea. I think, surprisingly, this situation might bring us to the idea of development of new approaches to work-based practical placement as well. Because as a rule, we provide these opportunities locally or just regionally. But now, the students, if we think about that consciously, just might have an opportunity to work internationally, staying just at home, but work internationally, and this work-based placement might be just considered as international opportunities, just which is favorable for many.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Abena.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Valentina. Actually, you just fantastically prepared the ground for what I wanted to say. So I absolutely agree that the digitalization, of course, increases opportunities and reach. So we now can do work-based learning also internationally, but of course, with it come new challenges for which we don't have solutions. So just to give you like a very down-to-earth example, at the weekends I was teaching again, and I'm teaching a work-based learning course in public management, and it's an international, so it's for a British University of Birmingham. So they have a huge international student population who now are entirely digital, engaging in a digital manner. Now most of them are Chinese, because that is the growing student cohort that is signing up in this particular discipline with British universities. Now, the Chinese students are impossible to engage online. I had 50 students in my seminar. I created breakout rooms. They were all supposed to present to each other in their breakout rooms. Yeah, and they were only 4 in each breakout rooms. Now, I traveled from breakout room to breakout room just to find that they don't switch on their cameras, they have their microphones muted, and they just sit there. And it's not that they lazy students, that they just log on and then leave. Yeah, it's not about taking attendance. That is their culture, because they are used to having a teacher talk at them. They busy writing notes, and then they leave the class. Now, the digital environment, I mean, this was already challenging in an on-campus face-to-face situation, but at least, you know, you could force them to engage. I would just put them on the spot. But now, engaging with them, delivering my lectures digitally, I'm at a loss. So I'm wandering through these breakout rooms. I have tried to scare them. I have tried to cajole them into participating. I have set rewards. I have done the whole menu, and I'm not getting anywhere. And what's needed is not just new teaching and learning approaches to broker this sort of knowledge across cultures and cultural ways of learning, but also new technology. I was thinking that really what we need is a whole sort of whole new push, an accelerated development in digital technologies that perhaps enables us to do simulations, you know, just sort of take it to a whole new level. And that goes, of course, much further than just work-based learning, that is generally applicable to all digital learning. But in the context of work-based learning, where we're now trying to connect worksite learning with academic learning, with peer learning, that is so important. The exchange amongst them is so important, and they are not talking to each other. Then they're all Chinese, so I thought maybe they gonna talk to each other in Chinese at the very least, but not even that, because that is not their culture. They are so teacher-centered and teacher-focused that right now I don't have the knowledge, the methods, the means, if I'm honest. You know, and in time, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, anyone faced with that situation, probably encountering very similar challenges. So I think we at the verge, at the dawn of a new accelerated development, just like Valentina said, you know, where it's not just about new methods of teaching and learning, but also very much about a digital revolution and a new evolutionary step.
Thank you for that, Abena. And I'm looking at a colleague here, Dorothy. I don't know if she wants to put on her camera, but we did some research on the future of teaching and learning with focus groups. And I think one topic with the pandemic, here she is, Dorothy. Hi. So I remember, and maybe this was the thing about the digital culture. Maybe you can just shortly say something on that.
Yeah, it was just, I was thinking about it, and therefore it was kind of summing up in the chat. If it's maybe a question of skills for self-directed and peer learning in a virtual environment. And it's like in our focus discussions, we had the topic with the digital culture, to establish a digital culture where we are think about creating a social and learning environment within a virtual space. And this is more like a methods of teaching and learning, or just it's more than bringing together in a cultural and social way, you know, how to create social space within virtual environment and to engage students to self-direct. You know, what Abena describes is quite interesting, because it's like the ability of self-directed and peer learning in that virtual environment. I'm not sure about, because you said it's in the Chinese culture, I'm not sure how it would work offline, if they would be able to work in groups together. I think it might be different, I guess. Therefore, it's like the ability of, you know, like moving in a virtual environment in a productive way. So yeah, it matches quite much to what our experts said concerning that. And I think it's a very important point. Thank you, Abena.
So thank you very much, colleagues. I go now with look on the watch to our very last round, because otherwise we will never touch the future more. So I may ask the experts for a very, very short vision for the last, well, maybe one sentence. A vision of work-based learning in higher education, maybe in 15 years. That's what we tried to do. Also what we tried broader in work-based learning to think of, but what is your vision of work-based learning in 15 years? I mean, you already touched, I think, about some issues, but maybe there is one sentence, something that you would say would be crucial. And I would start actually the other way around and saying, Abena wants it. Abena, you wanted, but it was Anita, Valentina, and then Carol. And then if the others want to join, you're welcome. Anita.
Yeah, thank you. In my vision, work-based learning is accepted and visible in the universities, especially with the help of smaller programs, as short-time programs.
Thanks. Valentina.
Oh, look, 15 years actually is a short period. Yeah, it is a short period. But I do hope, I have strong hopes for smoother university labor market transition. That is, thank you.
Thank you. Carol, your vision, you've seen so much. What do you say?
Experiential learning is accepted and understood at university level. Equality, diversity and inclusion is understood and wide-ranging, and the structures of universities adapt to include those things.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much for that. So if anybody else has visions, you could say them now or write them in the chat, or how do you say, or shut your mouth forever. I don't know, this was directly translated. I think that is not, I didn't mean it rude, but it means for you. Now there's the chance. If you want to share your vision, do it now. Anybody? I do not hear. Then I may at this, oh, I said, Abena, I thought.
Okay. So just take it with a pinch of salt, right? It's just going to be a very provocative vision. So given the current developments with the COVID-19, and if we possibly have one or more external shocks that are impacting especially the economies worldwide, I would say that perhaps in 2 decades, we're not just looking at the situation where experiential learning is accepted and understood, and as Carol said, along with the diversity and equality requirements that come with it, but where it's actually inevitable because jobs are scarce, labor markets have shrunk and incredibly diversified as a result of these unforeseen external shocks, such as COVID or other pandemics or events, terrorist events, perhaps, whatever. And therefore, only those that can present an education that combines academic with experiential, with peer learning, even stand a chance on the labor market. So just something provocative to throw into the round of future scenarios.
Thank you very much. Any other provocative thought? And thanks, Pat, for, well, making that a bit more clearer what I said. So then I would like to say thank you to our panelists. Thank you for all of you for this, I think also for me, very inspirational week. Thank you, Carol, for being in the start and at the end with us and like rounding up everything. To all colleagues who did presentations this week and to all parts of the world. I may give for a final word now the floor to Carmen, and I don't know if there is my colleague Pascal here, because next week we will also have You Can Open Fora with a new topic, and this is actually, should I say something, Carmen? Should I go on?
Yes.
No, you take on.
Pascal cannot actually join us today, so he asked me if I could do very quick presentation for him. So I'm going to share only very briefly. It's going to take 2 minutes.
While you're sharing, I can say it will
Mhm.
actually go in direction of COVID and digital learning. So what we already touched upon this week, Kame, if I may.
Exactly.
It's
Yes.
digital learning in continuing education and the aftermath of COVID. So really looking beyond COVID and what that means for issues of university lifelong learning and digital learning within that. So I think this is the whole topic,
Yes.
but go
Yes,
on.
as you can see here, we have the same kind of structure as we've had in week 1 and week 2. We have a master class on Monday. It will be Dr. Ingrid Leduc from the University of Lausanne, the Technical University of Lausanne. And then on Tuesday, we'll have Susan Dennett. I think that we know her now because she's been very attached to our event, Open Fora, these 2 weeks. So thank you. And then we have Esther Martinez from University Carlos III of Madrid. On Wednesday, we'll have Peter van Dalen from Amsterdam University. On Thursday, we'll have Alfredo Soello. Also, he's been with us these 2 weeks, so thank you. And Aidova De Franchi. And on Friday, we'll have a panel like today with all the keynote speakers. And I think that is going to be a really interesting week, also very different from this one, but somehow also connected as everything. So that's all I wanted to say. Please, if you are interested, you are still in time to register and to join us.
Thank you very much, Kame. Sorry, I lose my voice now. I wish you all a good day, a good weekend, and
You too. You
stay
too.
safe and healthy, and hope to see you soon.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.